Hey, what's happening, y'all? I'm jamixdowns with intessionmusictech, and just quickly want to let you know that this tutorial is actually part of a full vocal reverb mixing tutorial. So make sure you stay tuned for the entire video called the Vocal Reverb Mixing Masterclass here on the intessionmusictech YouTube channel. So with that being said, let's get into the video and let's get to work. Getting perfectly timed reverbs is such an easy and effective trick to utilize when mixing vocals, and it's definitely one of those small things in mixing that really has the ability to give us huge results. So let's get into the session and see how this incredible technique works in action. All right, so the first reverb trick we're gonna look at here is setting your reverb times, and this is something that's really easy to do. So all you have to do is take the number 60,000 and divide that by the tempo of the song. And once you've done that, then you want to take that number and then move the decimal point over 2 points. And I'll show you what I mean. So for example, in this song, the tempo is 140. And when I divide that by 60,000, then I get 428. And what I need to do is move that decimal point over to 4.28. And that's essentially how you're going to get the quarter note of that session or of the tempo. And it's really just that easy. Again, I had done this earlier. Sorry, this should be an 8. 4.28. And that's our decay time. And again, that's the quarter note. So if you divide it by 2, then you'll get the decay time of 2.14 and so on, or you can multiply it if you want longer decay times. But the important thing to keep in mind when you're setting your delay times is not only to set the decay, but also to set the pre-delays. So now that we have our decay time set, it's important to set the pre-delay as well to make sure the pre-delay is in time if we're using pre-delay. And the same thing would apply here. You just multiply it by 2 or 4, whatever it might be, and take it as high as you want. But we got to make sure that that pre-delay is also in time with the decay, or the effect just won't be as effective. So let's actually just, we kind of did it a little bit earlier in the tutorial, but let's take another look at this and see how it affects the vocal. So I'm actually going to put this to 2.14, and this is the 8th note. And let's see how much better it sounds when it's in time. Especially on a song like this, it's really important to have the decay time set because she's singing in pockets and it sounds so much more pleasing to the ear and just sounds better when the decay is fading out to the time of the tempo. It's really important. So I'm going to adjust this decay time where it's not in time, and you can see the difference that it makes. So it's a subtle difference, but it's one of those things that's actually a big difference. And I'm going to play around with this pre-delay as well. I'm going to set it to 21.4 and see how the pre-delay sounds when it's timed to the session. as you can see, when it is in time, it just makes everything more in sync. And this is just something easy you can do. It's not like it takes a lot of time. You just whip out your phone or a calculator, boom, it's done, it's set. And you need to do this with all of your reverb. So if you're applying multiple reverb types to your vocal, then you want to make sure all of the delays are set in time. And again, this might seem like a small thing, but it actually can and will make a big difference, especially in a song like this where there's pockets and that reverb is kind of carrying over and you can hear it. It's very present in the mix. It just sounds better if it's in time and decaying in time with the song. So huge tip here. Something that I use on every mix. This is pretty much automatic. When I'm pulling up my reverb now, I just set the time and then work with it in that way. So this technique that I like to call a reverb ride is a really powerful way to bring emotion and movement to a vocal, and works really, really well in arrangement transitions. And this is definitely one of my favorite reverb tricks that I like to utilize in all my vocal mixes. So let's get right into the session and see how it works in action. Okay, so the next must-know reverb trick is what I call reverb rides, and they're just a really interesting way to help with transitions in the beats. And I'm going to show you what I mean here. And this is a really good example to show you guys actually in this particular song. So let's just play this here first. So this section right here before the beat kicks in, what we want to do is actually just raise the reverb really high in that section and just give it a big feel. And this actually works better with the longer decay times, this particular technique, but we only do it in sections, so it's not going to wash out the whole mix. And I'm going to show you what I mean here. So this involves a little bit of automation with your plugin. So I have the large plate here, and what I'm going to do is go here to level, and I'm just going to get this out of the way. And what I want to do is just bring this reverb up in this particular section. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit more, and if I go here, actually no, it's this section. So there's a couple ways to go about doing this. One, I can just raise the whole level of this section. And I'm going to actually pull this down a bit so you can hear the effect better. Okay, so let's hear how this sounds. One more time. So as you can see, it's just a nice build up going into the transition to when the chorus comes in and the beat kicks in. And this is one way of doing it, of just pulling it all the way up. The other way of doing it is actually having it gradually come up, and this can work for longer reverb rides. It doesn't have to be on small sections of this. If you say you have a bridge section and there's kind of a big buildup, you can actually have a long reverb ride throughout that whole section. But just to quickly show you an example of this, let's hear how this sounds as well. So we're going to want to do that a little bit more here. Let's hear that one more time. So that sounds really cool. So these are two ways that you can actually go about doing this. And as you can see, it's a really, really easy technique, but it's a powerful technique as it's just more engaging, and it just kind of brings the listener more into the song, and just that transition just sounds so much bigger and better. So this is what I call Reverb Rides, and this is a great trick that I like to use on a lot of my tracks. The technique of sidechaining reverbs was a big game changer for me because it's so useful when it comes to trying to get a clear and present vocal in specific sections of the vocal. And I'll show you what I mean by that in a second, but this is definitely more of an advanced mixing technique and requires some experience with mixing to be able to apply it correctly. But just being able to know and utilize this technique is what, in my opinion, separates a novice mix from a pro mix, and I'll show you why I believe this to be true right now in the session. All right, so the next trick that we're going to look at here is a complete game changer, and you're going to see why here in a second. And again, this is more of an advanced mixing technique, but once you're able to understand it and apply it, this can really make a huge difference in how your vocals and your reverbs and delays are going to turn out. And this is a side chaining technique, and again, it works hand in hand with reverbs and delays, so I'm just going to show you both in this tutorial. First, I'm going to show you how to set it up, and then I'm going to show you how to apply it on your vocals. So the first thing that we have to do is go to our effects end, and I have a delay and a reverb here, and then I have it going in to, I'm actually just going to mute this EQ here, and then I have this reverb going into a compressor. So we need to pull up a compressor on our reverb effects end, and I'm actually just going to get this out of here so there's no confusion. So this compressor is coming in right after my reverb, and what we want to do is set a key input, and I'm just going to use bus 2 here, and on this particular plugin we want to make sure that it's set to an external side chain. And then what we do is we go into the track that we wanted on. So this is my lead vocal track, and I am going to pull up bus 2 here. So now this side chain is affecting the reverb, and then the next thing that we need to do is bring in the actual reverb effects in, and I believe it was on a half note delay. Let's just go back here. Yes, it was on the half note delay bus. So now what we want to do is I'm just going to play this vocal. So that's the reverb. I'm bringing in the reverb now directly on this track. And a lot of times reverb can get in the way of our vocal, especially in a situation like this when the verse is starting to kick in. We might want that vocal more present, but we still want the reverb tails after she finishes singing. And I'm going to show you what I mean here. So I just pulled on the reverb here, and now I'm going to bring in the side chain effects in. Just going to pull these over. Okay, so here's how this works. So essentially what this is doing is that when the vocal kicks in, it's actually compressing the reverb so that vocal is more present, and then as the vocal dies out, the reverb kicks back in, and it just gives it a really cool effect as far as creativity is concerned, but also from a technical standpoint, that vocal is much more intelligible now too than just drowning it out in a bunch of reverb. So let's hear how that sounds again. So I'm going to pull this reverb down a bit. Man, that sounds really nice. I really like how that sounds. As you can see, this is why I feel this is such a game changer. It can really add a huge creative element and uniqueness to your mix. And it's important, like, to so to adjust this properly, let's just quickly go over the settings here on the compressor. So you generally want to have a higher threshold here, and this is all just depends on how much reverb you want to have on the vocal. So let's play around with the threshold. Now this is a good compressor because you can see visually what it's doing. So we pull back the threshold, and again, this is just going to be to taste for your specific vocal how much reverb you actually want on the vocal while it's playing. And then the attack is going to set, of course, when the compressor engages on that reverb. And then the most important setting here is probably this release setting, because this is going to dictate when that reverb starts coming back into the signal. So generally with a release, you want more of a medium type release. You want it to sound natural. So as you can see, when I pulled it fast, it was just that compressor was just coming in and out, in and out. You want it to be as natural as possible. So you want more of a medium to even a later release time. So I'm going to mute these so you can see how big of a difference side chaining can make. So I'm going to mute this reverb. All right, sorry, I'm going to mute the side chain. Man, that sounds beautiful. So I really love this technique. And the beautiful thing about this technique is that it works really well with delays. And while I have this going, I'm just going to quickly show you how great it sounds with delays as well. So I'll actually leave that the reverb on, and then I'm going to bring in actually I'm going to mute the reverb, and we'll just listen to what this is doing for the delay. So let's hear this. Because a lot of times we don't want our delays to be clogging up the vocal too much, and this is a really cool technique. We just kind of want it at the tails of the pockets, and this is a really useful technique to accomplish this. So watch what happens when I take this side chaining off. So of course that's not what we'd want to be after. We want it as a tail, and this is a great technique to do this with your delays. So let's hear this one more time. So that delay, it has just a soft undertone under that vocal when the sidechain, when the compression is kicking in, which sounds, it's not overpowering the vocal, but when it releases, then we still get that delay tail. So sidechaining is a really powerful technique when it comes to using reverbs and delays from a creative and a technical standpoint. So the technique of using reverse reverbs has actually been around for a long time, but it's still a fairly popular technique used by producers and mixers, and it's just always a great trick to have in your back pocket, as it can add a lot of uniqueness to your production. So let's get right into the session and see how this works in action. Okay, so the last trick that we're going to cover to round out this vocal reverb mixing masterclass is the classic trick of using a reverse reverb, and this is actually something really easy to do. And again, this technique's been around for a long time, and it's just because it's just a really unique trick, and it just works, and it's a great trick to use in in transition. So when you're transitioning to a different section of a song, this can be a really cool technique, and it's really easy to do. So what you want to do is duplicate a track and then take the section. So in this particular part of the beat, I've muted this this kind of cymbal riser here. I'll show you what I mean. So say you didn't have this and we muted that. See, it just doesn't transition well. So what we can do is do a reverse reverb to do that. So again, what we want to do in that section, we're just going to take this part of the vocal that we want to reverse, and we are going to bring it, I got to section that off. And then we're going to bring it into a new track. And the key to this is for this to actually be a gradual thing, we want to highlight this section, but we want to give it some space when we're highlighting it. So we don't just want to highlight this section, we want to actually give it some space to allow for the buildup. And you'll see what I mean here in a second. And you can do this in any DAW. This isn't just specific to Pro Tools. Most DAWs have a reverse feature on it. But in Pro Tools, if you are using Pro Tools, you have to do this through the audio suite. And we have to go through Reverb and grab our Deverb. And when we go through audio suite, it has the reverse function right on here. So what we want to do, and the settings on the reverb aren't as important, and for the sake of this tutorial, I'm just going to leave the settings as they are. And what we want to do is reverse this, and then we want to render it. So now what we want to do is just kind of place this in the pocket where we want it. So we kind of want to have that and right where the beat drops. Let's get rid of that, and let's hear it one more time. And that's a reverse reverb, and you can use this, like I said, I find it works best in transitions, but you can just play around with it and have some fun with it. And again, you know, if you don't have a riser, you just want to try something new, you could even do this on top of a riser, any type of transition, but it's just a cool trick. Again, it's been around for a long time, and it's just really effective.